Thank you for everyone for joining us today. We're excited to launch our new quarterly writing workshop series with author Dr. Sanderia Faye. If you have questions during the workshop, please post them in the chat or the Q&A, and we will get to them at the end of the program. Dr. Faye serves on the faculty at the Southern Methodist University and is a professional author, speaker, activist, and sommelier. Her novel, Mourner's Bench, is a winner of the Hurston Wright Legacy Award in Debut Fiction, the Philosophical Society of Texas Award of Merit for Fiction, and the 2017 Arkansas Library Association Arkansanian Award. She is the founder and host of Lit Night Dallas reading series, and she is working on her second novel, 11. So welcome, and I'm going to turn the presentation over to you.
Hi everyone, and thank you for coming to talk to me today and listen to what I have to say. It's sort of weird because I can't see you. And usually I'm looking in the eyes of my students to see if they're still listening. And so today I want to talk to you about the elements of fiction. And I'll talk about 5 or 6 main elements of fiction. And I'll give you a brief description of what I think about them. And I'm going to use the Cinderella story to tell you, to talk to you about these elements and how the Cinderella story fits these elements. A lot of people who write about how-to books on fiction use Cinderella as an example in a way that I'm going to do tonight. And the elements that I'm going to give you can be used in a short story. It's the same elements that you're going to use in a novel or nonfiction or memoir or personal essay. You will end up using some or all of these elements. So knowing them can't hurt in any way. And so probably you will hear me just say fiction because that's what I teach mostly. But when I say that, you know that you should be able to use them in any way. And so we're going to talk about Cinderella, and we all know that story, I hope, at least have heard of it, how Cinderella was, her mother passed away and her father remarried. And then Cinderella moved in with her stepmother and 2 stepsisters. So we know that story. And so in this particular story, what they do is set up the exposition for us first. They just sort of just summarize it. That's when we talk about what I consider as exposition as well, when we summarize it. And they start off also with the setting. Me personally, I generally have a character in mind, but we're going to follow these elements that that this story is doing, and start off with the setting. And the setting is the time and place of the story's action. And setting includes ideas, customs, values, and beliefs. And so the setting of Cinderella was a long time ago in a faraway place when they had kings and queens and prince and princesses. And I guess if you think about it, this could be also make you think about now with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. So you can think about that as well. And the story takes place a long time ago, a land ruled by a king and a queen. And so that is the setting. And why is setting important? And why is setting important too as one of the elements of a story? Generally, we want to know as the reader wants to know right away, where am I? Where is this place? Where is this place? Where does this take place? Because it's a very different story even if I set a story in Dallas or if I set it in Austin. We're going to look for similar things. In Austin, I might look for more music. In Dallas, I'm going to look for the Cowboys, right? Or something like that. So we're going to be, our mind, as a reader, our mind gathers information by just saying a city. I'm sure when I said Austin, you thought of one thing. If I said Dallas, you think of one thing. And in Houston, if I said Houston, if any of you are familiar with that, I will, that you have another idea. So even in 3 cities that aren't that far apart, and they're all in Texas, but if I just said Texas, you some time ago, you probably would have just thought about the oil, like Texas, big oil. One time we would have thought about the show Dallas. So that's what setting does for a city. If I had said what 98 or 99 Cowboys, we would probably think about the winning group, the one that won the Super Bowl 3 times. Troy Aikman would probably come to mind, and Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin. Those are 3 people that just really come to mind. And so as a writer, that's sometimes that save you sometimes without having to go into as much detail about the setting. You place the reader where they are by just giving them the name of the place, the name of the state, or sometimes it's even a fictional town. Myself, I created a fictional town, but it was in Arkansas. So it still placed the reader somewhere they can have an idea of what Arkansas is. And then I went on to tell them, to show them what the city was through the eyes of my character. And speaking of that, we can't have a novel or book or of any kind, a short story, without characters. And characters are the actors in the story's plot. They can be people, animals, or whatever the writer chooses. We usually have the protagonist, who's the main character, and the antagonist is the person in conflict with that main character. Not all stories have antagonists, but all stories have protagonists in a main character. Somebody that we want to follow, somebody that we're interested in their well-being, somebody we want to root for, we want to win, we want to get out of whatever situation they're in, or someone who takes us to a faraway world like Cinderella does, right? And so if you think about Cinderella being the character, the main character in Cinderella, and the stepsisters, Cinderella is the protagonist, and the antagonists are the stepsisters and their mother. And if you know that story, you know they antagonize her throughout the entire story until she became the princess. And then we have, and I'm going through these, but right after I finish, there will be time for question and answer. So if it's anything that you don't get, I will come back and explain that to you. So we have point of view. And point of view refers to the relationship of the narrator or storyteller to the story. So we have first person point of view, and the narrator is a character in the story referred to as I. I did this, I did that, I ran, I jumped, I played. In third person limited point of view, the narrator reveals the thoughts of only one character, referring to the character as he or she. You change the pronoun. She jumped, she ran, she played. And then you have the third person omniscient, which not many books are written in as much now. Generally, we have the third person limited. And the third person omniscient, then that's your godlike creator. They know everything about the story and the story's events and reveals the thoughts of all the characters. And the other two, the first person and the third person limited, we only know the thoughts of the main character, the one that we're following, the one that we're rooting for. If you jump into somebody else's head and try to tell us what they're thinking, then you've broken protocol and your reader will probably lose interest or wondering why you're doing that. Cinderella is told through a third person omniscient point of view. In that time when this story was written, they told stories through third person omniscient. And so we were able to know what was going on everywhere and with everybody. And some other books that you would read, like if you would read some of Toni Morrison's books, like Beloved, it switches points of view throughout the book. So we have things going on all the time. It opens with the third person point of view where you can see all over the 324, the land where the characters live. You can see that. And it's almost like somebody is looking down saying, what is going on at 324? And then right after that, the camera zooms in and we come into a closer point of view. The next thing that I want to talk about is plot. Especially if you write a short story, you will need a plot. The short stories actually sometimes they're generally more plot-based than they are character-based. And I teach literary fiction, and sometimes I know that when I was taking classes, professors didn't want to use the word plot, but I kept writing my novel and I felt like I needed something for this novel. And so, and that's what I needed. Even though it's a fine plot, a thin plot, I needed something to carry this novel forward. And plot is the sequence of events in a story. Each event causes or leads to the next. Plot is often created through conflict and a struggle between opposing forces. Sometimes people get conflict and plot mixed up. They juxtapose which one is the other. The external conflict is one between a character and an outside force, such as another character or nature or society or fate. An internal conflict takes place within the mind of the character who is torn between opposing feelings or between different courses of action. So you can see how they get mixed up, because how many times did I say conflict in that? So in the Cinderella story, the problem is Cinderella wants to go to the ball, but her sisters prevent her from going. The thing is, in any story, you don't have a story until something happened. Somebody has to want something and decide to go get it. Or there has to be some inciting incident. Then after that incident, the character decides, I want to do this. The incident in the Cinderella story was she was cleaning. Everything is normal. Generally, everything is very normal. And then something happens out of the ordinary. The thing that happened out of the ordinary here was that they got an invitation to the ball. And Cinderella was not going to be allowed to go, but she wanted to go. She wanted to go with her stepsisters. And then the conflict is going to come because the sisters don't want her to go. The external conflict is Cinderella versus the stepsisters and their mother. Okay. And I wish I could see you so I could see your heads nodding so you can say, oh, yeah, I agree with that. But I'm going to pause here and say, plot is about cause and effect, right? When you're doing a plot, something causes something, and this is the effect of that, right? But in a story, nothing happens until you put your characters in action. So again, there's an inciting incident, whatever it is, invitation comes in the mail, that character that we're following. And in this particular story, we do follow, even though it's omniscient, we follow Cinderella more so than we do anybody else. And so that after that inciting incident, then the character, like the invitation, the character like Cinderella wants something. She wants to go to the ball. And then if you've ever wanted anything, it doesn't come easy. And so that's where the conflict comes into play. The stepsisters and the mother was like, no way. You can help us get ready for the ball, but you can't go to the ball with us. And so in the Cinderella story, it is man versus man, or woman versus woman. There are several different conflicts, but types of conflict. But I'll tell you a couple of them. In the man versus man, this is an external struggle between two characters. Then there's man versus society. This is an external struggle between a character and a social force or condition produced by society, such as poverty, political revolution, or a set of values. Man versus nature. This is an external struggle between a character and some natural obstacle, such as a hurricane or something like that, like a natural force. And then man versus self. To me, this is one that's more complicated for me to write, but this is an internal struggle within a character where aspects of his or her personality may struggle for dominance. These aspects may be emotional, intellectual, or moral. Sometimes when I think about man versus self, it's like the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other one. Or it's like, if you want to lose weight, and then it's like cake there. Should I eat it? Shouldn't I eat it? That's the conflict that man has. And so I just want to talk about the 5 stages of plot, and I'll give it to you also based on the Cinderella story. So first you have the exposition, and I talked about that. And then you have the rise in action. I call the rise in action everything that happens in the middle, right? All the mess, everything is messy in the middle. And when I talked about the inciting incident and the character wanting something, that character needs to want something big enough that we are interested enough to follow her to the end, to the resolution. And if we don't have that, if we don't, in the beginning of the story, right up front, as quickly as possible, we want to let the reader know what that character wants so that the reader can start to root for that character. That is what makes the reader turn the page. When we get to the rise in action, that's everything about the sisters go to the ball, the fairy godmother, Cinderella goes to the ball, she dances with the prince. The prince, all of that is in the prince says he'll marry the woman who the slipper fits. All of that is in the rise in action. And if you look at it, it used to be Freytag's pyramid, and it looked like a triangle, right? But now we get more complicated with our stories, and it could look more like a hilly, something that's very hilly. Like sometimes it's up and down and up and down. So it's several symbolic triangles. In this particular story, it goes straight up. It starts out and then it goes straight up to the climax. The climax in Cinderella's story, the sisters try to force their feet into the slipper and it fits Cinderella. The one thing I always tell my students about the climax is it's where you slow down the story. You want the reader to know that this is what they're reading. This is the climax of the story. And if you remember in the Cinderella story, he tried on each, he went through the land trying on the shoe for any woman. And then when he finally got to the sisters, they tried to fit their shoe and foot in the shoe. And we really was like right there on the edge, wondering if either one of the sisters would fit. Now the climax is when the shoe fits Cinderella, right? That's the climax. Right after the climax, a lot of new authors want to end right there, but you do have the reader wants to be satisfied. And so in this particular story, the fall in action is when Cinderella and the prince get married. And then the story is winding down now. And then afterward is the resolution, and they live happily ever after. And so that's, to me, what makes a good story. There are other elements of fiction, but those are the primary elements. And I tell my students that it's like learning to play the piano. The scales are going to always be the same. It's with practice and practice, more practice, reading, looking for those things, these elements, and how other writers use them, trying them for yourself, getting better, trying them again, failing, and not giving up until you figure out how this works in your story. And that's pretty much my presentation that I have for you tonight on the elements of storytelling. And so hopefully you've been added some questions there that I can answer for you.
So I'm gonna turn on my video so we can do questions.
Okay.
So if you guys have questions for Dr. Faye, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A. I'll start off. I was writing down some questions as you're talking, so that way people can think about what they want to ask. One of the things you talked about was practice, and reading and researching. Do you recommend a book or a source to help that people should read or be looking at to help them with the writing process?
I use, for my beginning students, I use Janet Burroway. I think it's not the writing fiction. I use that for a little bit more advanced students, but she has another book on writing fiction, Janet Burroway. I think it's Burroway. I use her book. I use Jewel Parker Rhodes, Free Within Ourselves. I use that book. That both books have stories and examples in them. So whatever it is that they're talking about, they are giving you the example. There are many people. You can't see it here. I should have turned it around, but I am always reading how-to books. So if you just Google elements of fiction or anything that you might want to know, all of those books can be helpful. It's just finding the one. There isn't one book that I've read so far that explains everything. And so say, for instance, if I'm trying to study plot, I have a book. I wish I could show it to you. I have a book. I'm just going to use my hand. I just gave you some, but I have a book about that thick on just plot, right? Just that. So, but that's not the only one I have. I have several more. So sometimes I'm just looking for something that's not working in my own stories. And I look through those books. Now, many writers don't like books. I do. I love them. They just said, read novels. And you can also find them. There's no such thing as, for me, as a good novel or a bad novel. I can learn from any of them. I can learn what not to do. I can learn what to do. And some person that says what not to do might be what's working for me, what I need to do, right? So a lot of things about writing is figuring out who you are and what works for you. But Amazon, you can't run out of how-to books on Amazon. And I read them all the time. But the one thing that I wanted to say too, I was told when I first started writing, read. You learn how to write by reading. But nobody told me what I was looking for. So what you're looking for are those elements that I just told you about, the scales or whatever you want to call them, the beginning. That's what you're looking for. How is the author doing that? And through reading, and when you're looking for that and thinking about what you want to do in your own work, that is how you learn by reading, not just reading. Because I was reading for pleasure the whole time. And it's like, I don't know what, I got 100 books here, but I don't know anything.
Somebody commented that the giant book you mentioned sounds like the 7 Basic Plots.
That is it. Thank you very much. 7 Basic Plots.
I'll look that. I already put a link to the catalog for the Writing Fiction, A Guide to a Narrative Craft, in the chat. I'll look for this other one, but first I'll ask this next question. It seems as though first-person point of view is the new trend. Does that seem right?
You know what? I don't know. I don't know what's trending. I wish I did, because there are so many genres of fiction, right? Like literary, popular, mystery, romance. So it could be trending in one area and not in the other. When I think about what I want to write, and if I'm like the book that I'm writing now, and I'm always trying things that I probably shouldn't be trying, but it's told from this perspective of each three women, a mother and 2 daughters. And so I change. So I may tell I tell the mother's part in third person, limited. And then the other daughter, she'll come in, then the next chapter, that's first person present tense. And then the next daughter comes in, and she's first person past tense. So I think about, what is it that I want to write? What am I writing? And what is the best way for me to tell this story? Sometimes when I think about how I want to tell it, what tense I wanted to tell it in, it's the wrong tense. I wrote my entire first novel, first person present tense. And then it ended up being first person past tense, looking back, like an adult looking back on our childhood, similar to To Kill a Mockingbird. So sometimes you don't know. Sometimes the characters will let you know. It's like, nope, that's not it. So listen to your characters, listen to your gut,
Do you encounter writer's block? And if so, what are some strategies to keep writing through it?
So I don't think there's a such thing as writing blocks. When something on my lip. I think it's like, I don't want to do it block. I don't feel like writing block. I rather watch TV, or I rather go to dinner with my friends. I just rather do whatever it is. Anything can get in your way from writing. Coming to a blank page is one of the most scariest things that I've ever done in my life. It is not the thing, but it's kind of like, I look at writing like running. I'm a runner, and or any type of exercise. I could have my shoes sitting next to me, and I can figure out 100 different ways not to put on those shoes and go run. Nothing changes about the route or anything like that. The number of miles that I'm going to run that day, whatever. But getting on those shoes and getting out the door is the most challenging thing I experience, other than coming to this blank page. But if you come to the page, and I tell my students that, and sometimes I'll just write something over and over, like type it. Mary had a little lamb, Mary had a little lamb, Mary had a little lamb. I mean, something that like you're breaking through that, your conscious mind, and getting to, because if you think about it, most of us that write, we get to that place. When we get to that place, that zone, you can't stop us. Nobody can. And we look up and we started, it was light outside, now it's dark. So the big thing is not writer's block. I don't think, it may be for some people, but not for me. It is coming to the page. And sometimes, like for me, I write in my head first. Like I think about what is it that this character is going to do and how am I going to figure that out. I actually figured that out in my head first. I have some friends who could come to the blank page, not have a clue as to what they're going to write about, and just start writing. If I come to the computer and I don't have a clue, I'm going to Google something or do something else. So I have to be ready when I sit down, almost bursting, like it's about to burst out of me. And I'm like, okay, it's time now. But some people can schedule every day, 7 o'clock. I'm going to write for 2 hours. That's not my personality. Learn, find out who you are as a person and figure that out. Some people may think I'm crazy that I would type Mary had a little lamb until I break through. But that helps me get out of my conscious mind into my writing mind. And then when I get there, I'm okay. I can write. And what another thing that stops people from writing is perfection. And that doesn't just stop us from writing, it stops us in life in general. And just remember, you can fix anything that's on the page, but if it's not on the page, you cannot fix it. So write a messy first draft, right? Make it as messy as you can. And because you can go change that. There's nobody there saying, except for you, that's over your shoulder saying, that's not right or whatever. That's just up to you.
Somebody commented, yeah, I tend to be a perfectionist. So what is the biggest pitfall that you think new writers fall into?
Thinking they know everything, thinking they don't have to practice. I have a student now. I think he must have had at least 1 or 2 classes before he got to me. But I'm teaching a beginning course. And but give yourself permission to fail. It's really not failing. You really don't have, your characters need to know. You just need to follow them to put them in motion and let them go to wherever you want them to go. If you start out in Texas and you're like, this character and I are going to California, your character wants to take the scenic route, what's going to stop you is you trying to stop your character from taking that scenic route. Follow him down the road. You can, in revisions, you can cut it, like, I'm sorry, I want to take that straight trip. I don't want to take the scenic route. I took a scenic route in my first novel. There's one character just wouldn't shut up. And it's just supposed to be there for like a couple of chapters, and it followed me all the way through the novel. One day I might have to actually write an entire novel about that character from that character's point of view. But just give yourself permission to have fun. Writing is supposed to be fun, right? It's just supposed to be fun, and you just, play around with things. We want what we put out the first time to be perfect. That is not going to happen. I think Faulkner did that, and As I Lay Dying, and I'm still questioning that, you're right? But the expectation,
I know you're not supposed to say that.
Higher now, like the expectations are really high. So because we have the computer, I mean, he probably wrote his on a paper, whatever. So, but for us, we have to be, when we do get there in the 20th or 30th revision, it gets more perfect as we go. It doesn't start out perfect. It starts out a big mess. And then we figure it out. One of my professors said, when you write a novel, it's all going to be on the floor and you're going to be cutting and pasting. And I have a computer. I'm like, no, not me. Where did I find myself? On the floor, all over the floor, cutting from one place, page 3, putting it on page 10. It's part of the process, but it's supposed to be fun. Remember paper dolls? I think they still have them. You try on this clothes, or if you go to the store when the pandemic is over, you don't know what's going to fit right away. And then the thing that the salesperson bring that you don't think is going to be the thing at all, that's the thing that you look the most beautiful in. So give yourself permission to explore.
So do you use, since you said you use a computer, do you use specific writing software, or do you just use regular Word? Do you have a process that works best for you in that sense?
I use regular Word. I started out writing, I still have a friend that writes on the legal pad, and when she types it into the computer, it's her first revision. I got away from the legal pad. I started out writing longhand, and it's if you've never tried it, if you've always been on the computer, try it. It is a difference in the way of something. I can't really put my hand on it, but I would say try it. At least try it, right, to write longhand. But I use Word. I've tried those other things, but I'm technologically challenged. And then like, I'm like that with directions. If you tell me one way to get to a place, I'm going to go that way until they close the road. It's just going to be me. And so after I left paper, I started writing on Word, and I still do that, but I've heard that there's some good software out there that really helps you with something. I don't know, because I bought a couple of them, but I looked at it and it looked confusing to me. So if somebody probably sat me down and showed me and gave me directions, like GPS does, or maybe I would be able to do it. But Word works, and I just use regular Word. I was an accountant first, so I still use a spreadsheet for everything. So you have to find what works for you.
Somebody commented, I wish I could remember who it was, but there's an author who writes their books on a BlackBerry. And for some reason, I feel like I've heard that as well. I actually know a YA author who's based in Austin who writes her whole first draft and then deletes it and starts over.
Oh, crap. But you do, I know how you can do that, but my memory is not that good.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the biggest takeaway from this, especially if you're starting out, is that every writer you talk to is going to have a different process.
Yeah.
There's not one set way to do it. Some of them do dream boards. Some of them do, I think
Scrivener.
it was.
I thought somebody really tried to convince me of Scrivener, and I was like, you got to come and walk me through it like I'm a baby or something. Then maybe I can figure that out. But yeah.
Yeah, so it really is about figuring out that thing that works for you, that gets you inspired.
Yeah.
When you're struggling to be inspired, what things do you do to kind of, refresh that well?
Walk away from it. Like you can go take a walk, go visit friends, go do something. It's not going to leave you. It's going to be there. Like I'm sort of in that thing now. I started working this semester, a lot of work, and my novel is sitting over there going like, hey, you need to finish me, right? And so I keep almost every day, it seems like it gets a little bit closer, right? But just find the time, make the time, and say, I'm going to schedule. I just have to, I'm going to schedule some time to get back to my work, because you can't get away from it. But if you are stuck, if you are feeling like, I don't know where I have to go or whatever, give your mind a break. Just take a break, take a walk, go see some beautiful scenery, go to the zoo, whatever that makes you relax, really. I wouldn't say have a drink, have several. But something to click, like for me, it's so weird when every time it clicks, I'm in the shower and I have somewhere to go. I'm getting ready for dinner or whatever. And I've trained my friends to know that if I say, okay, I got to cancel because I got to sit down and write, that I have to do that, because sometimes when I get out of the shower, go to dinner, and then it may be 4 or 5 more days before I get back to that. So don't let the inspiration pass you. It always, for some reason, like I have an appointment, I'm going out to dinner with friends, I'm getting ready, it hits me. And then I'm like, oh, they think I'm the worst person in the world. But your writing has to take precedence almost over everything. It is that jealous, it is that demanding, especially if you're writing a novel. The short story, Ron Carson said, stay in the seat. Don't, like, if you start, like if you get to a point when you start, get everything you need right there, your coffee, your everything. Because it's that point when you just get ready to get up is when you lose it. So if you're writing a short story, he thinks that you should stay in the seat until you get to the end of it. So that may be like 10 pages or 12 pages or something, just depending.
What are some things you wish people had told you about the publishing process?
Oh God, everything. If you guys read Kiese Lehman, he just wrote a piece for LitHub, I believe, that talked about how he had to pay back $50,000 to get the copyrights to his first 2 novels. Well, no, one of them was nonfiction, one was a book of essays, and one was a novel. And it was I knew him from as long as I've known him. He had been trying to get that his copyrights back. So I would say that a lot of times we end up, like for me, I didn't have an agent. I published with a university press. That press will own the copyrights to my book until I'm dead. And after that, like they said, my kids, my dependents will be getting the royalties from that book. They hold on to your copyrights. I don't know why. But now people are getting more conscious about what their contracts are. They're not jumping in just so that I can get published. Because that book that, like my first book, that you don't think is going to do anything, might do something. And you're not going to want someone else, like if it's going to be adapted into a film or something, you don't want to give away 50% of that. Or like, I think Kiese sold lots and lots of copies of that book. It may even been on the New York Times bestseller. And so the publisher is making money, but you aren't making anything. So just make sure, just like anything else, make sure you know what you're signing. If you have an agent, don't think that you're being stupid for the question. Ask every question in the book. And sometimes because you want to get published, you will go ahead and sign that doggone contract anyway. And for me, the way I feel about it, if you know what you're signing, that's what you sign. Go on to your next book.
All right. Let's see. And I think you kind of already touched on this, that you kind of just write when the inspiration hits you. But do you have any like specific things that you have to have? Do you have to have your desk set up in a certain way? Do you have to, right? Are there things that you have to have so that you're ready to get in there and just go with the flow?
Just my computer. I have a friend she writes at coffee houses. She gets bored with one, she changes it. I pretty much write at home, but I write at my kitchen table, I write on the couch, I write when I get up in the mornings. So I don't even have a special time that I write. I prefer in the morning, like things that I have to do for myself, like write. It's better that I do them when I get up. If I'm going to write or exercise, I need to do that initially, like when I get up, I need to get that out of the way. Because if I don't, something else is going to get in front of that. And, but when I wrote the first novel, the characters, I know some of you are going to think I'm crazy, but they woke me up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And they would be like, come on, we got to get this done. So I like 4 o'clock in the morning, but for the life of me, I can't wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning now. So I just had to figure out another time. But I'm better first thing in the morning. But I do write at night, like late at night. But I'll write until almost the next morning, and that doesn't make me a good employee.
And I'm looking to see if we have any other questions. We got probably about 5-10 more minutes if we have any more questions. What was the getting your first novel published? What was the one thing that you were surprised about that kind of happened along with that process?
I don't know. I already knew. I had met the people at the University of Arkansas Press. And when I met them, I thought that I knew that they were going to publish my book. It's something that I just knew. And then when I first met them, they said, "Oh, we don't publish fiction." I was like, "Why didn't I read that on the website?" Right? And so I just let it go, but I still had an idea still had that feeling that was the best thing for me. And the reason why after I got the feeling, the reason why I wanted to go with them is because I write a vernacular language, and I write about, my setting is usually Arkansas. And so I knew that even if they didn't get the Black vernacular, they would get the Arkansas. And so I wouldn't have to explain so much to them. But anyway, they said they didn't publish nonfiction. I was like, well, that's a surprise to me. But anyway, not long after that, maybe a couple of years, but a friend of mine, a historian, her booth was next to them at a conference. She saw where they had published a fiction book. And so they said, yeah, we're just publishing Arkansas fiction, historical sort of, and I write historical. And they were like, remember Sanderia? And so that's how I got my contract. So that was the biggest surprise to me, is like everybody has a different story about the way that they get their contract. Many people told me, oh, you should wait, get with a bigger publisher, all of that. But for me, I wanted to be a big fish in a small pond and not a little fish in a big pond. And so my experience with them was very good. Could it have been different? I really don't know. But the book knows what it wants to do. And it did. I still talk about that book, still selling that. That book is still selling. And that's probably why Arkansas said that. And it'll be around. It's a historical fiction. It's set in the 60s. And it reminds me, like if you know To Kill a Mockingbird, if Caprinia had a daughter in the 60s, then that would be her story, like another 8-year-old daughter like Scout and her family and how that worked out, but not in Alabama, but in Arkansas. And so just be open, stay open, don't compare. The worst mistake you can make is getting out of your lane and trying to look over in somebody else's and comparing yourself to them. I've lost friends over that because they thought their book should have done better than mine, or I published somewhere that they didn't publish. And I was like, man, I didn't know it would be like this, but I thought it was going to be like, oh, everybody's excited for everyone. But people are very competitive. This is a competitive field. And so get your mind right about that. And when it's time for you to publish, there will be a place for you to publish. It's not like it's a big secret on how to do it or anything. It's just being ready, like even me, my book was only half done University of Arkansas Press signed me to a contract. And I thought it was just about done. Like maybe I had 25 more pages to write, but I had 200 more pages to write. So, but anyway, but just leave yourself open. Don't think about publishing until you're ready. That when you get your book ready, when you had it edited, when you feel like I've done all I can do with this, then try to find your agent or whatever. And people used to tell me it had to be perfect. There isn't any perfect book, not one that's published that you can't find some mistake in it. Do your best. Get at least, if you can and can afford it, have some editor go over it for you. They're professionals at that. You're professionals at storytelling. And so you want, in anything you do, you want your chances to be as good as you can, because you never get a chance, but one chance to make a first impression. And so just remember that, but nothing is perfect. If you're a good storyteller, somebody sees that it's something there, and it could just be like horrible grammar. Don't tell anybody I said that. Or whatever, but somebody can tell, like, this person has something. If I work with them a little bit, I can see something in this person. So don't tell anybody I told you all these things.
So the biggest thing is you have to be open. You have to be open.
Open for whatever happened. It's an adventure, right? It's an adventure. And I don't think anybody, not anyone, will start out, especially for the novel, on this adventure unless it's calling you, because it's not something easy to do, right? Somebody told me, oh, I wrote this whole book in a week. I'm like, I didn't believe that either. Or I didn't want to read it, like, okay, well, good. But if you can write a book in a week, hey, who am I to say?
So, and part of it, so this next question, part of this is on me because I didn't think about this in forethought to have arranged for this. But we have a question about, do you have signed copies of The Mourner's Bench somewhere out in DFW that people could purchase it?
I don't, but there are several independent bookstores here. And if you buy it and have it sent to the store, especially like the Wild Detectives is close to me, and even very close is what's the name? Deep Vellum Books. So if you have the book, or if you say I'm going to, especially Deep Vellum Books, if you have the book and you're in that area, I'll come over and sign it for you.
Good. And I apologize for not thinking of that ahead of time.
No, I don't have. There are a few, like every time I do an event, they have the bookstores will carry the books, but generally they're carrying the books that are new right now. I think there should be a section for Dallas authors but if you're going to find it anywhere on the shelf right now, it would be Deep Vellum Books. And since we've been in this pandemic, I don't really know where they are, but any of them you can order from any of the bookstores. Help the independent bookstores if you can, especially the ones here in Dallas if you live here. And if you're in the area, or if it's a group of you and you say it's in Fort Worth, I really know how that feels. I was you one day, seemed like a while ago now, but I was signing for you and everything. The one thing I did a talk a few weeks ago, and the place was in New Hampshire. It was a bookstore in New Hampshire, and she sent us book markers so that I'm going to sign them and send them back in the mail to the person.
Yeah, when we have author, what I think of as an author visit, we make an arrangement with. There's actually a bookstore in Fort Worth called The Dock, and that's usually what we do.
Yeah.
But with it being the writing workshop, I didn't think that through. So that is totally on me that I didn't make those arrangements.
And Doc will order them for you. Those are my friends. They're from Arkansas too. They're
Yes.
from Arkansas. But also, if you write a book and leave them with Jennifer at the library, I'll stop by there and sign them. You know, Jennifer, if you get a few,
Sure.
I'll stop by there and sign them for you.
And we can definitely do that once we're actually open.
Oh,
So
you're
we're
open
still
yet.
not completely, yep, we're still not completely open, but we can, as we start to reopen, we can certainly work something out for that too. So for those of you who wanted that, when you signed up for the webinar, you got an email that has my email address. And if you just email me, I'll collect those. And then when we have a time when we're open, we can kind of make some arrangements with Dr. Faye to kind of work that out. So,
Yeah.
Well, it's 7:00 and we're gonna end it here, but I want to thank everybody for attending and thank you, Dr. Faye, for being with us today.
Well, I wish I could see you, but this new technology is crazy. Maybe Jennifer, when they open up and we can be together again, they'll invite me back out to the library and I can see you. But I appreciate this. This is Nano, right?
It is NaNoWriMo week, month. Yep.
Yeah. I always try to start that, and I'll get 1 or 2 days into it. But when I first heard about it, I thought like this can't be, nobody can write that many, but people are doing that and having success. So
they are. And last year we did some in-person events for that, but since we're in person, we thought we'd just start the Writers Workshop series instead. We will have another Writers Workshop in February. So everybody keep an eye out on our website and Facebook for more information about that. And we hope that you have time to join us on Saturday afternoon at 4 for our next author conversation with author Sasha Geffen about their new book, Glitter Up the Dark, which is all about fascinating information about many popular musicians and songs that you've heard about. And so I certainly hope you join us, and thank you again, and everybody have a very nice evening.
Thank you all. Keep writing.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.